As many as 25,000 demonstrators. They marched through downtown Atlanta over the weekend during the No Kings protests. This is an aerial view of them on Saturday as the protesters started at the Atlanta Civic Center and made their way to the state capitol, about a mile-and-a-half walk. Many held signs and American flags to send a clear message to President Trump's actions after returning to the White House 9 months ago. The head of the march, Stacey Abrams, Senator Raphael Warnock, and Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson all addressed the crowd and urged them to fight back. Demonstrations took place in DeKalb County, with hundreds marching down La Vista Road in the area of North Lake Shopping Center. They were there for more than an hour, chanting and holding signs. Several people told 11Alive News they were concerned about democracy and science not being supported, issues that are personal to people like Ellis Jones. And you know, the demonstration's mostly peaceful, but one protest in Marietta turned confrontational. Witnesses say that a man driving a pickup truck took a protester's flag and argued with demonstrators before driving away. Another man tried to grab the flag, but the truck driver then pushed him to the ground. Police eventually tracked down the truck driver after he had left the area. Officers retrieved the flag and then let him go. Organizers claim the protest brought out more than 7 million people nationwide in around 2,700 events across 50 states, and for the most part, a sigh of relief for local law enforcement. Let's recap what went right and, if anything, what went wrong with Dr. Thaddeus Johnson from the Georgia State Department of Criminal Justice. Thad, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, great to be here. Great to be here.
You know, we just saw you Friday talking about this going into the weekend, and now that it's over, what's your first reaction, both here in the Metro and across the nation?
Well, a couple of things. On a personal note, a sigh of relief because I expressed optimism that things will be okay. And, most of the time demonstrations, they don't turn violent. And when you have great visible leadership, when you have organizers who particularly they emphasize de-escalation on both sides of the badge, when you see them working together and planning, this is what you're going to have. You're going to have a few bad characters. You have counter protesters and those things there. They can kind of turn. But think about the millions of people and the thousands of people that we had. This was a very, very successful event.
After having worked in law enforcement, what kind of conversations are going on right now and the days afterwards, talking about how to prepare for the next protest?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that law enforcement, they know that this won't be the last. And they're probably debriefing. They probably debrief with organizers locally to discuss what went right, what could have been better, what were some weakness points. Did they have staging areas for people? Did they make sure they blocked the flow of traffic, where communications delivered clearly to the individuals involved? Also making to see in the aftermath, were there any cleanup that was necessary? How much were the costs? Did things go on budget? Was anybody hurt? And so these are things we may not find in immediate hours after a protest or demonstration, but these are the things that are going through, cycling through now. Any arrest reports, any things like that, to kind of get an understanding and intel on how to make this better. But all in all, a very successful event.
And Thad, the latest numbers we got from organizers here on the local level within the last 2 hours, they're saying they think about 25,000 people were out there at Atlanta Civic Center. Just talk to me about what went right when it comes to Atlanta law enforcement being out there, when it comes to dealing with a crowd of that size and what goes into it. 25,000.
That's a huge undertaking, and it's important that you manage the crowd and not control it. That's more reactive. They were very proactive. They had mobile arrest units for when anything went awry or things flared up. They were there on scene. They had great communications between the various law enforcement agencies, EMT. They did a good job of clearly delineating where were the lawful areas for people to be, what were the lawful rights, and also they did not escalate. You didn't see tons of officers out there in riot gear and militarized equipment. You saw many in plain clothes. You also saw many that were in their traditional uniforms. And what you saw were law enforcement and communities working together. And really the spirit of it, if I may talk about it, felt like everybody understood the importance of getting it right and what the optics would be. And so also with the rhetoric, they were saying this is anti-American, the possibility for counter protesters. You mentioned one instance incident that happened, but think about of all the possibilities, and that's the one thing that they were able to stifle very quickly because they were mobile. They made sure they had exit plans, egress and regress. So it was almost, if you think about it, it was a case study in how you manage crowds and how you work from DeKalb to Marietta, all the way into Atlanta City as well.
And you know, we had some of these protests back in June as well, and there were some counter protesters there, to your point, during that incident, and there were some arrests that we saw at the time too, mostly because folks wouldn't leave the street when they were being asked to. If you had to give a grade to the local police here in Atlanta and give a grade to the organizers for how they did over the weekend, what grade would you give and why?
Absolutely, I would give it A. You know, it's a couple things, and the reason why is because they were not escalating tactics. They, the way they approached it, it almost as they followed best practices to the T. The work between law enforcement and the organizers and other local leaders to see our leaders out there up front to bring a sense of civility and direction to what's going on with it. These are the things that you really see goes correctly. And if you think about across the nation, even when you had incidents flare up, it was generally secondary incidents in very small fractions. We're not even sure it was part of the primary and be within the purview of control of the organizers. And even when those things happen correctly, you don't hear about use of force, you don't hear about tons of excessive force, you don't hear of anything where officers tend to escalate. They really responded and reacted. Also, the organizers make sure that everybody was trained in de-escalation tactics, their volunteers, and made sure that they were unarmed and emphasized those things that can escalate risk. So all in all, I give them an A because there's always room for improvement.
There you go. As a professor, you know, you're always looking for that plus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just can't give it, but they should be very happy and very pleased in the city of Atlanta, across the nation, with organizers and law enforcement. What a great day.
Dr. Thaddeus Johnson, we appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure. Thank you.